All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Coverage of the conference finals here at Hoops Tonight is brought to you by Chase Freedom Unlimited. How do you cash back? All right, so we're going to be doing our Eastern Conference Finals preview today. For the third time in the last 4 years, the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics are meeting in the conference finals. Don't forget, if you missed it earlier, I did a breakdown of the Western Conference Finals as well between the Lakers and the Nuggets. You'll find that a little bit further back on the YouTube feed. And then tonight, after the final buzzer of Lakers-Nuggets Game 1, we'll be going live on AMP to break that game down. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Volume's YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss any show announcements. And if for whatever reason you guys miss one of these videos and you can't get back over to YouTube to finish, don't forget you can find them wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. All right, let's talk some basketball. So, like we usually do, I'm going to do my series notes where we just go over some of the surface level stuff. Then we'll get into major matchups. Then I'll make my pick, and then I'll make the case for the other team to win. So, the Celtics are a minus 550 favorite. That's obviously massive. I was actually on with Matt Moore earlier today talking some conference finals best bets. If you want to bet the Celtics to win, I would actually bet Jayson Tatum to win Eastern Conference Finals MVP. I think you can get that around like minus 180 or something like that. With the way that the Celtics offense is structured, Tatum's just getting much larger point totals. And he's in a super good groove right now. So that final 4 shots that he hit in Game 6 and then going crazy like he did in Game 7 for 50 plus. He's just in a great groove. If the Celtics win, he's going to average 28 points a game or so. There's just no universe where he doesn't get Eastern Conference player of the conference finals or Eastern Conference Finals MVP. So as a betting opportunity, if you're wanting to bet the Celtics to win the series, I'd bet Tatum as the MVP. The season series is 2-2. The Celtics won the first 2 games and the Heat won the last 2 games. All right, let's look at some major matchups. And this first one really is the biggest one and the one that matters the most in my opinion. Can Erik Spoelstra make the Celtics continuously play into their worst tendencies? So Miami is at a significant personnel disadvantage. Now, Miami Heat fans who are listening are abundantly aware of the fact that, let's just put it this way. I have picked every single series correctly in this postseason run. Not game to game, but I've picked every single series correctly, except for the Miami Heat over the Bucks and the Miami Heat over the Knicks. So they have been my one blind spot. And I get the reality is a lot of us made that same mistake, but I laid out in these Game 6 breakdown, the one after the Heat ended that series, I broke down why I believe the Miami Heat have been overlooked by so many people. And the gist of it is the way that Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo can cover for so many things on the court that it creates small, achievable roles for their role players that allow them to succeed in those roles. And then Erik Spoelstra is the best coach in the NBA. I vastly underestimated that in the previous 2 rounds, which is why I was just flat out wrong. But this Celtics team is much, much more talented than the Knicks team is, much, much more talented than that Bucks team is. As a matter of fact, I think that the Celtics have the most talented roster in the NBA, as I've said repeatedly over the course of the last 2 years. Boston has better guards. You're going to take Marcus Smart, Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon over Kyle Lowry, Gabe Vincent, and Max Strus any day of the week. Boston has better wings. Jimmy Butler might be the best player in the series, but certainly not by any sort of large margin. He's also kind of cooling off. He had a 67% true shooting percentage against Milwaukee, 55% against the Knicks. Same types of shots he was making to beat Milwaukee, he was missing against the Knicks. That's a big part of how Jalen Brunson had a shot at the end to send that to a Game 7 before he turned it over. Jimmy Butler missed a couple pull-up jump shots that he had been making against the Bucks, but that he's been missing as of late. But no matter how you feel, Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown certainly make a better duo than Jimmy Butler and Caleb Martin do. And the forwards are basically a wash. Like Bam Adebayo is clearly the best player in that front court, but between him and Kevin Love and Zeller versus Al Horford and Robert Williams, like it's give or take either group. They're different. Al Horford's a 5-out spacing big that can provide a lot of problems. Robert Williams is a great shot blocker, vertical spacing threat, that kind of thing. I don't think that there's a significant advantage either way there. So that means that if Miami's going to win this series, it has to be tactically. It has to be through the coaching advantage because the players are just better in Boston. But like I said, I think that Spoelstra is the best coach in the league. I think he's the best at covering for his own players' weaknesses and the best at exposing the weaknesses in his opponents. So how is he going to do that to Boston? I wrote down a couple of things. Number one, biggest one, ball pressure. I expect Jimmy Butler to guard Jaylen Brown. mainly because Jalen uses physicality a little bit more to get to his spots than Tatum does. And I think you're going to see Caleb Martin on Jayson Tatum. And I think both of them are really, really going to try to pressure the basketball and get up underneath those two guys, in large part because the ball handling is the one thing that they're not fantastic at compared to the other things in their skill set. They're also going to play the passing lanes like crazy. You guys might remember, I can't remember which game it was last year. God, I wish I could remember. It was one of the first 3 games of the series, but there was a game where Miami just came back and beat the Celtics with straight ball pressure in the second half. I think at one point they picked Tatum clean at half court, like 4 possessions in a row for run out dunks, right? Like they can really bother Boston with ball pressure and playing in passing lanes. That's a big way that I expect Erik Spoelstra to try to exploit the personnel disadvantage that they have. Secondly, force them to make good rim decisions. So they did a lot more switching last year. Bam has been more willing to run a traditional drop coverage, and I actually think that they should against Boston a little bit more. Why? Because Boston's not the best pull-up jump shooting team in the league, so I think that's a shot that you could be willing to give up to them in the drop coverage. And Boston doesn't like to score in the mid-range. It's a weakness in their analytical approach. So keeping Bam at the rim as much as possible and help will force the Celtics to consistently make good reads. And one of the things that the Celtics are known to do from time to time is instead of driving and kicking when they're at their best, they'll dribble up the floor and settle for bad threes, or they'll drive into traffic and try to finish over a great shot blocker, fall on the ground, complain at the refs while the team is running the other way. Miami had a lot of success against Boston in transition last year with that same effect. So ball pressure the hell out of them, try to force them into turnovers, capitalize on their ball handling shortcomings. Force them to make good rim decisions, so capitalize on their basketball IQ shortcomings by keeping Bam Adebayo at the rim as much as possible and having solid rotations. And last but not least, mixing in zone. I think that Erik Spoelstra is really good at this in particular for 2 reasons. One, he knows how to do it in spurts so that it disrupts rhythm. And secondly, they just practice their zone a lot more or something, I don't know, because their zone just works better than most of the zones that you see around the NBA. But bottom line is you need Boston to play very poorly to have a chance to win the series, and Erik Spoelstra, via his coaching and the adjustments that he makes over the course of the series, are the best pathway forward for that. Secondly, who will win the Jimmy Butler versus Jayson Tatum matchup? So going into last round, so before Heat Knicks and before Celtics Sixers, you probably would have said Jimmy is clearly the better player, right? Like he just executed Giannis Antetokounmpo. Tatum was not playing super well, especially about halfway through that last series. But Jimmy's cooling off. Like we talked about earlier, his true shooting percentage dropped 12% from first round to second round. And Jayson Tatum's heating up. You know, it really felt like that was a breakthrough game for him there at the end of Game 6. He was 6 for 8 on pull-up threes in Game 7 against the Sixers. Everything is clicking for him. And that just simply put, the only chance you have to win this series is to have Jimmy Butler win that matchup. And it's going to be a lot harder than it could have been if Jayson Tatum didn't get going the way that he did. Third, Bam Adebayo, the scorer. You guys might remember Game 3 last year, right? So in Game 3, Bam Adebayo suddenly gets super aggressive in the short to mid-range, starts attacking a lot with these little push shots and turnaround fadeaways over his right shoulder, everything there at the semicircle, basically. And he has 31 points and 22 shots, ends up hitting the dagger in the fourth quarter, super aggressive in all of his post-ups and roll man situations. That is a key for this team, especially without Tyler Herro, who we're going to talk about in a second. You need Bam Adebayo to be an aggressive scorer. I've been super impressed with Bam just in general in this postseason run with his overall physical aggression. You're going to need a big series out of him. And last but not least, can Tyler Herro make an appearance and be effective offensively? According to his injury timeline, he has a chance to come back at some point during the series. I think they're going to need him just because of the offensive punch. Again, like, I know that there's been a lot of talk about, is Miami better without Tyler Herro? And I tend to disagree with that kind of stuff. They're different, better defensively, more of a ball pressure team, right? But like at the end of the day, you need a guy that can overcome the difficulties of a playoff setting. And Tyler Herro is a guy who's capable of that with his ability to rise up and elevate and shoot over the top of defense, right? So I think you need Tyler Herro to come back at some point and make an impact, especially later in the series. A lot of things have to go right for Miami. That's just a fact. I'm picking the Celtics in 6. I have too much respect for Erik Spoelstra to pick against them any quicker, although I did say that last round. But again, I think the Celtics team is different than the Knicks team. I think even Heat fans would be willing to admit that. And I think the talent gap is just too much for Spoelstra to compensate for. I don't even think it'll be as much as last year. I think the Celtics learned a valuable lesson last year, almost losing to the Heat in a 7th game to that Jimmy Butler pull-up transition 3 that he left a little bit short, right? So I think they bring a little bit more serious effort. I think it's more the tactical stuff that disrupts Boston than the effort-related stuff. But Tatum's in too good of a groove right now. I think that's just too much for them to overcome right now. You would need Jayson Tatum to have a nightmare series, and that dude is just seeing an ocean when he shoots at the basket right now. The path for Miami. Jimmy Butler has to play like he did in the first round. You need a dominant defensive performance from Bam Adebayo as a rim protector. And the Celtics have to have extended stretches of bad play brought on by Miami's defense, trying to funnel them into the rim, mixing in some zone to disrupt a rhythm, excellent ball pressure. Big Kyle Lowry series, too. I'd love to see Kyle Lowry in some on-ball possessions against Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown to try to disrupt that a little bit. And then they need some shot variant stuff. Like they need Jayson Tatum to cool off as a pull-up shooter. If Jayson Tatum shoots 50% on pull-up threes, it's just going to be really difficult to overcome that. So I am picking the Celtics in 6, but I do think there's a realistic path for Miami that's there. And most importantly, I think that this is going to be just a good example for us to learn, especially as we look forward to the finals, about whether or not Jayson Tatum can continue to ride this wave. I talked about this with Colin yesterday, but the one thing that I have concerns for with Boston, because like if you look at their roster, it's the most talented roster in the league, really good second star in Jaylen Brown, multi-versatile style, right? Like I can play big with Robert Williams and some more traditional coverages. I can play Al Horford at the 5 and I can switch everything, or I can space teams out on offense with 5-out spacing for driving kick. I have all these different play styles, right? But Jayson Tatum has to play like an absolute superstar, and sometimes he just kind of wavers away from that. And it's one thing to look across the way at 2 other bad playoff performers in Joel Embiid and James Harden and feel more confident than them. It's another thing to look across the way and see Jimmy Butler, who's not going to back down under any circumstances, or to see a LeBron James, right, or a Nikola Jokic. So a big thing looking forward for the Celtics is going to be, can Jayson Tatum maintain the confidence and the moxie that you need from your superstar to win these hotly contested playoff series? All right, guys, that's all I have for right now. I'll see you guys after the final buzzer of Game 1 tonight.